All right, guys. So I've seen one other video on this channel, Black Stories Untold, and I really enjoyed the in-depth, like psychological framing of the information, the the way that examples were used to illustrate points, etc. So I figured I would do a reaction to another one popped up in my feed, and it sounds really interesting just from the get-go and the thumbnail, although you can't see that now. But anyhow, let's get into it, and yeah, I'll react accordingly.
For 400 years, white racists have weaponized our own people against us. And today, I'm breaking down the 4 types of black betrayal that keep us shackled. Level 1, the house slave. Meet Steven, the house slave who loves his chains so much, he'll kill to keep them on. This ain't just a movie character, y'all. This is the blueprint for the most toxic black person in America.
That's who the hell you calling Snowball, hoss boy? I'll snatch your black off that man down here in the mud so fast, make your head.
Steven.
See, Steven don't just serve white people. He is a white racist in black skin. He's so deep in Stockholm Syndrome that he fears freedom more than bondage. Why? Because oppression is all he's ever known, and he's convinced himself that his survival depends on keeping happy. In Django Unchained, Steven isn't just a servant, he's the enforcer. When Broomhilda tries to escape, who punishes her?
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is
Steven. When Django arrives as a free man, who's most threatened? Steven. This man has so internalized his oppression that he sees other black people's freedom as a personal attack on his identity. Sound familiar? That's Uncle Ruckus, the cartoon version of what's very real in our community. These are the black folks who will police you for being too black, who mock our culture to get white folks to pat them on the head and say, "You're one of the good ones." But this isn't just comedy, people. This is psychological warfare. The house slave mentality runs so deep that these individuals will literally work against their own people's interests to maintain their position in the white power structure. Herschel Walker literally said, "Black families don't need fathers because we had strong women." This man was so desperate for white Republican approval that he threw his own people under the bus on national television. He painted black fathers as dispensable while running for Senate in Georgia, the same state where his own father abandoned him. But here's where it gets really sick. Walker wasn't just talking to white Republicans. He was talking to black mothers, telling them they should be grateful to struggle alone. He was telling black children that they don't deserve fathers. Also, he could get a pat on the head from people who will never truly accept him. The house slave doesn't just hurt us through their actions. They poison our minds with self-hatred. They teach our children that being black is something to overcome, not something to celebrate. They turn our survival mechanisms into weapons against ourselves. Here's what makes the house slaves so dangerous. They convince white people that racism isn't the problem. We are. They give oppressors permission to keep oppressing because, see, even they agree with us. Remember, Steven wasn't just loyal to Calvin Candy. He was more racist than his master. When the house exploded at the end of Django, it wasn't just a building burning down. It was the destruction of an entire system that depended on black people policing other black people. And that's why this mentality is the foundation of all the other levels. Every other type of black betrayal starts with this basic premise, that white approval is more valuable than black liberation.
Before we get to the next level, if you're learning something from this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for Black Stories Untold.
I would highly encourage anyone who's interested in this kind of content to subscribe to the channel. I will provide a link to the original video in the description of mine. A lot of what he's covering is not all of it. He obviously has far more understanding of everything than I do, but some of what he's claiming are things that I've kind of thought about for a while, and just I don't have the depth of knowledge that he does, and I don't know how to communicate it clearly. And well, lack of knowledge means that I'm like, there's a bunch of gaps. So I would just be covering certain things that are like unrelated, that link to the bigger picture that he has, or at least seems to have. So this is really interesting. And so far, at least from my perspective, it seems that this is completely accurate. Uh, the examples are great, and I've seen exactly what he's talking about. Another is Denzel Washington. Maybe he'll uh, touch upon him later. He seems to be similar to some of the things that he's describing. But yeah, let's continue.
We're out here telling the stories they don't want you to hear, exposing the systems they don't want you to understand. Your support keeps us free to speak these truths. Level 2, the assimilationist celebrity. I'm not black, I'm OJ. These people perfected the art of racial amnesia. They got so comfortable in white spaces that they forgot where they came from. Or worse, they remember, but they're ashamed of it. The assimilationist celebrity plays a different game than the house slave. They don't attack us directly, they just disappear us. They code switch so hard, they develop split
One look and you had me pegged, huh? Just another cat lady, about to eat some cat food.
personalities. Around white folks? Oh, I don't really see color. But the moment they need us for damage control, suddenly they remember they're black. Tiger Woods literally created a whole new racial category, Cablinasian, to avoid being called black. This man was so uncomfortable with his African heritage that he invented a word to escape it. But when his career imploded and he needed redemption, suddenly, black people were supposed to support him because we're family. O.J. Simpson spent decades distancing himself from the black community. He lived in white neighborhoods, dated white women, and famously said, "I'm not black, I'm O.J." But when he was on trial for homicide, who did his lawyers appeal to? Black jurors who remembered how white America had treated black men in the justice system. Remember when Michael Jordan said, "Republicans buy sneakers too," when asked to support Harvey Gantt, a black Democrat running against Jesse Helms, one of the most racist senators in modern history? That's the assimilationist playbook. Stay profitable, stay safe, stay silent. These celebrities think they can buy their way out of blackness. They move to the whitest neighborhoods, send their kids to the whitest schools, marry white spouses, and raise children who don't know they're black until the world reminds them. And when racism smacks them in the face, and it always does, they're shocked. But here's the real damage. They sell our young people a lie. They make kids believe that if you just work hard enough, speak white enough, dress right enough, you can escape racism. They teach our children that being authentically black is a limitation, not a source of power. Think about how many young black athletes and entertainers have followed this blueprint. They sanitize their image, avoid controversial topics like police brutality or systemic racism, and present themselves as safe for white consumption. They become brands, not people. Product.
We have got to the point where literally
What in the fuck? We're like 5 minutes in. This is like ad number 3. Jesus Christ, YouTube.
anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is based
Not advocates. The assimilationist celebrity is dangerous because they don't just betray us, they make betrayal look aspirational. They turn sellout behavior into success goals. They teach our children that the price of admission to white spaces is the abandonment of black identity. And when the next generation of black celebrities follows their lead, staying silent while their people suffer, who do you think they're modeling themselves after? The cycle continues, and our voices get quieter and quieter in the spaces where they need to be loudest. But here's where it gets even more dangerous. What happens when these sellouts don't just stay silent, but actively become the mouthpiece for our oppression? Level 3.
Definitely see a lot of what he's describing. Um, I will push back a little. Well, it depends on exactly what he means by the claims. But during a couple of points, he mentioned that OJ dates white women, and uh, the type that he's describing of black men uh, marrying white women. That's sort of like, if your point is to go, the reason why they did so is because they're sellouts and all of the psychology that you described, that's fine. But it's a shaky ground here, because I'm not one of those stay with your own color type people, and I think that's extremely backward logic. That's like fucking going back like fucking 30 years or some shit. It's just not smart. I really don't know if that was his intention, but if so, I definitely have to disagree with that. Like, we, the problem is we don't know, or maybe he does and he didn't share that information due to lack of time or whatever. That could be the case, but me, I don't know. Uh, did O.J. Simpson marry a white woman because he was selling out and realized that that was his best chance of success, etc.? I don't know. Did he actually love a white woman? I don't know. But if it was the latter, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You do not have an obligation to, quote, stick with your own kind. That is very backward, very backward. It's really, in my opinion, it's no different than like white racist people who are like a parent freaks out because their white daughter is dating a black man, etc. Like, you got to stick with your own kind. It's the same damn thing. Completely disagree with that if that's what he's trying to push. Let's continue.
3. The puppet politician. Systemic racism doesn't exist in America. This is Candace Owens. This is Clarence Thomas. This is Tim Scott, telling us America isn't a racist country. These are the most dangerous black people in America today. Why? Because they don't just abandon us. They lead the charge against us. They become the black face of white racism, giving oppressive policies a chocolate coating so they go down easier. Clarence Thomas sits on the highest court in the land and systematically dismantles every protection our ancestors died for. Affirmative action? Gone. Voting rights? Gutted. Civil rights protections? Weakened. And he does it with a smile, knowing damn well he wouldn't be where he is without the very programs he's destroying. Let's be real about Thomas for a minute. This man was accused of physical harassment by Anita Hill, a black woman who put her career on the line to tell the truth. And how did he respond? He called it a high-tech lynching, using the language of black oppression to defend himself while throwing a black woman under the bus. Then, he spent the next 30 years on the court, making sure other black people couldn't access the opportunities that got him there. Thomas's wife, Jenny, was actively working to overturn the 2020 election results, and Thomas refused to recuse himself from cases involving January 6th. This man has so little regard for justice that he'll corrupt the highest court in the land to serve white political interests. But Thomas operates in the shadows. Candace Owens, she's out here making anti-blackness into a full-time career. Owens tours college campuses telling young white kids that racism is over, that black people are just making excuses, that slavery was actually beneficial because it brought Africans to America. She's turned hatred of her own people into a brand, a multimedia empire, a whole damn industry. She literally said that if he had just stayed in Germany, he would have been fine, because she was so desperate to own the libs that she lost her damn mind. But here's the thing, that wasn't a mistake. That's who she is. Someone so consumed with anti-black ideology that she'll defend him to make a point against black progress. And look at these audiences when she speaks. You see the joy on these white faces? They finally found black people who will say what they've always wanted to say. See? They said it, not us. We're not racist. We're just agreeing with the black lady.
Wow. YouTube actually fucking demonetizes over saying Hitler? What the fuck? Wow. Just because you use the word Hitler does not mean you agree with his ideology. Like, what is the rationale behind this shit? Anyhow, that's just an aside. Completely agree with all this. Candace Owens, especially, she is like, she may be, and all political shit aside, has nothing to do with me being on the left, anything like that. I think, sincerely, objectively, Candace Owens might be the stupidest political pundit in the United States. Like, I sincerely think that she might just have the fucking gold in that one. What he's talking about reminds me a lot of the prominent right-wing economist Thomas Sowell. I may have mispronounced his last name, but I have a tendency to read a lot, and that means that I mispronounce shit fairly frequently. But he has basically made a brand of being an economist and spinning like right-wing economic theory, which to me is just fake. It's like all made up to like cater to like corporate interests and shit. It's not even real like economics. But anyway, beside the point. He is known for this like attacking black people and claiming that like there is no systemic racism despite all the evidence, that like it's all like a failure of culture and shit like that. He's a terrible, terrible human being. But maybe he'll go into Thomas Sowell here in a moment. I'm going to continue.
But if you want to see the ultimate puppet show, let's talk about Kanye West. This man went from George Bush doesn't care about black people to walking around in White Lives Matter shirts with Candace Owens, like some kind of minstrel show. Kanye had the audacity to say that 400 years of slavery sounds like a choice. This man really sat on TMZ and told the world that our ancestors chose to be kidnapped from Africa, chose to be chained in slave ships, chose to be beaten, assaulted, and systematically subdued for 4 centuries. You know what that was? That was Kanye telling white people exactly what they wanted to hear. That slavery wasn't that bad, that black people are responsible for their own oppression, that racism is just a mindset we can choose to overcome.
Obviously, Kanye is wrong. So the most important thing here is he's factually incorrect. He's a fucking moron. He's got psychological issues, obviously, if you know anything about his recent shit in the media. But what I believe, and it's kind of what the person talking here is illustrating, I think, is that, well, the obvious, that Kanye doesn't identify, or at least any identification of being black that he has is far less significant to his identity than success at all costs. And this goes back into, I believe that these aren't like perfect, like, how do I word this? They're not like perfect compartmentalized types. There's a lot of like carryover. Like, I think it's best looked at in a spectrum format. Although I understand why he did it, because it makes things a lot easier to understand and it can be digested far easier. But like some black people that he's describing fit at least partially into numerous categories. And Kanye is a great example of that. Yeah, I think that's mainly it on that. Let's continue.
And when he got called out for it, what did he do? Doubled down. Started hanging out with Candace Owens, wearing MAGA hats, meeting with Trump in the Oval Office, grinning like a damn fool while the president used him as a prop. Then this man had the nerve to go full anti-Semite, talking about going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. You see what happened? He went so far down the white elite rabbit hole that he started parroting their conspiracy theories. And suddenly, all those white Republicans who were using him as their token black friend dropped him like a hot potato. But here's what really pisses me off about Kanye. He had everything: platform, influence, money, respect. He could have used his voice to speak truth to power. Instead, he used it to give white racists exactly what they wanted: a black man saying that black oppression is our own fault. Kanye represents the puppet politician at its most pathetic.
Hello.
When you're smiling, when you're smiling.
Someone so desperate for white acceptance that they'll say anything, believe anything, do anything to get that approval. And when the approval runs out, they're left with nothing but the damage they've done to their own people. Tim Scott ran for president on the platform that America is not a racist country, while living in a country where black people are killed by police at 3 times the rate of white people. This man said welfare was worse for black people than slavery. He compared government assistance to the kidnapping and death of millions of African people. But here's what makes the puppet politicians so insidious. They don't just speak to white people, they speak to confused black people too. They tell working class black folks that their struggles are their own fault. They tell black women that feminism is their enemy. They tell black men that white racism is actually black people's fault. This is the puppet politician's function: to be the ventriloquist dummy for white racism. They don't just harm us through silence, like the assimilationist. They actively recruit others to harm us. They give white America moral permission to continue oppressing us while convincing some of us that oppression is actually freedom. The puppet politician is the most dangerous because they have power, platform, and purpose. They're not confused like the assimilationist or broken like the house slave. They're strategic. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're getting paid well to do it. But here's the thing that really gets me. Sometimes the most dangerous betrayal comes from people who genuinely think they're helping us. Level 4.
Although I haven't seen level 4 yet, I believe that this third level there is where mainly Thomas Howell sits. If you don't know anything about him, do a basic search, and yeah, he's like the fucking right's go-to economist. Although again, I truly don't think he is an economist. He just kind of he works backwards. Like, this is what elite, like prominently white business people and powerful like politicians and shit want. So I am going to like work backward and create like a system that shows in some way that it's effective in any way that I can. And that's what Thomas Howell does. He's not actually an economist in that sense. Like, it's not based on like theory that like legitimate theory anyway. It's like all, again, like it's carved out backward. Like, he has a goal and then he sets up all of his ideas and thoughts to substantiate that goal. And it's very dangerous and very damning, especially to Black Americans.
4. The tragic compromiser. Meet Booker T. Washington, the man who told black people to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, while white folks were cutting the straps. Now, before y'all come for me in the comments, I get it. Booker T lived in a different time. Jim Crow was in full swing. Lynching was a weekend hobby for white folks, and this man was trying to keep us alive. But when he gave that Atlanta Compromise speech in 1895, telling black people to focus on vocational training instead of demanding civil rights, he gave white racists exactly what they wanted: our permission to wait. Cast down your bucket where you are, he said. Accept segregation. Focus on economic development, not political rights. Prove you deserve equality instead of demanding what's already yours. Sound familiar? That's respectability politics, and it's still killing us today. Washington believed that if black people just worked hard enough, were respectable enough, contributed enough to the economy, white people would eventually accept us as equals. He was wrong, dead wrong. All his compromising did was give white racists moral cover to continue oppressing us while pointing to his words as proof that even we agreed with their system. While Washington was teaching black people to be patient, white folks were lynching us at record rates. While he was promoting vocational training, they were burning down Black Wall Street. While he was preaching accommodation, they were passing laws to strip us of the vote. His strategy of appeasement didn't stop the terror. It enabled it. But here's what makes this tragic. Washington genuinely loved Black people. He built Tuskegee Institute, educated thousands of our people, and fought for economic advancement. His intentions were pure, but good intentions paved with Black bodies still lead to hell. Today's respectable compromisers follow the same playbook. They tell us to vote our way out of oppression, to work within systems designed to destroy us, to be twice as good for half as much. They preach the politics of respectability while our people are killed in broad daylight. You know them, the leaders who say we need to build bridges with people who want to build walls around us. The preachers who tell us to turn the other cheek while bullets are flying. They mean well, but good intentions don't stop police bullets. They mean well, but patience doesn't pay rent. They mean well, but respectability doesn't resurrect the dead. Here's what makes this the most tragic level. These people genuinely love us. They're not seeking white approval like the others. They're trying to protect us, but their fear makes them accept crumbs and call it progress. They tell us to wait for the right time, the right candidate, the right moment. Meanwhile, we're dying in the streets, in prisons, in poverty. How long are we supposed to wait for freedom? How long are we supposed to prove we deserve what's already ours? The respectable compromiser isn't evil. They're just scared. Scared of white backlash. Scared of losing what little progress we've made. Scared that if we push too hard, too fast, white people will take everything away. But here's what they don't understand. White people never gave us anything out of kindness. Every right we have, we fought for. Every law that protects us, we bled for. Every step forward, we took by force, not by asking nicely. The compromiser believes in the myth of gradual progress, the lie that justice delayed is not justice denied. They think racism will fade away if we just give it enough time, enough patience, enough good behavior. But racism isn't a misunderstanding, it's a system. And systems don't reform themselves out of the goodness of their hearts. They change when they're forced to change. Here's what connects all four levels. They all serve the same master. Whether it's through active betrayal, silent complicity, political puppetry, or respectability politics, they all keep white racism alive. The house slave convinces white folks they're good masters. The assimilationist convinces us we can escape. The puppet politician gives racism a black face. And the
new iPhone 17 Pro is finally here. And at US Cellular, it's easier than ever to get it on us with no trade-in.
respectable compromiser tells us to be patient with our own oppression. But here's what they don't want you to know. Every single one of these archetypes exists because white racism needs them. They're not aberrations, they're features of the system. The house slave provides psychological cover. See, even they like being enslaved. The assimilationist provides false hope. If you just try hard enough, you can make it too. The puppet politician provides political cover. It's not racism when a black person says it. And the compromiser provides moral cover. Even their own leaders say they should wait. Together, these four types create a complete ecosystem of black subjugation. They handle different aspects of the psychological, political, and social work needed to maintain white dominance. But here's the real tragedy. Many of these people could have been freedom fighters. The House intelligence could have been used to organize resistance. The assimilationist platform could have been used to advocate for justice. The puppet politician's power could have been used to advance our interests. The compromiser's love could have been channeled into revolutionary action. Instead, white racism captured their talents and turned them against us. That's the real genius of this system. It doesn't just oppress us with external force, it recruits us to oppress ourselves. So the next time you see a black person tap dancing for white approval, ask yourself, which level are they on? Because until we recognize these patterns, until we call out these sellouts, until we stop making excuses for people who harm us in the name of helping us, we'll never be free. Drop a comment and tell me, which type do you think is the most dangerous? Which ones have you encountered in your own life? And most importantly, what are we going to do about it? Because our liberation depends on it. And liberation doesn't come from compromise, assimilation, or puppet shows. It comes from the courage to name our enemies, even when they look like us. The revolution starts when we stop accepting betrayal as strategy, when we stop calling sellouts leaders, when we stop waiting for permission to be free. The question is, are you ready to stop waiting?
We are not.
Good stuff. So, before I forget, I was waiting for him to finish, but the compromiser. This is obviously he's talking about this psychological phenomenon in the context of Black people and their plight here. But that same way of thinking, I believe, well, first, I think this is the most dangerous because it's so veiled. It's actually pure intentions, which has a tendency to remain undetected, to most anyway. So it seems like the right thing to do, a positive thing, but it's actually, in that way, it isn't fought against to the same extent as a result, in my opinion. But where I was going with that is I think that it's highly linked to some of the people in the Charlie Kirk situation. I believe that there's many people, not all, some people actually are just saying what they actually think. But many of them are compromisers, as the host here described. And they're sort of pulling this neutrality, this like faux neutrality, in my opinion, because they think it's the best course of action, even if they disagree with like Charlie Kirk. The problem here is that both sides are not on equal ground. And this goes back into what the host here was talking about as well. It's not like, so some people will go like, when the left had power in the White House, they would try to trample free speech. No, they didn't. Free speech is not just like being able to talk, period. It's specific in that it's limitations by the government to interfere with your free speech within reason. Like, you can't make calls to violence and stuff like that. But, like, I just lost my point. Yeah, so people go back and point to the left like they did the same thing. No, they didn't. There is absolutely no evidence that I've ever been presented with of actual free speech violations by the left. I'm not saying this to like defend the left at all. I'm trying to show that this is not equal, and it's dangerous to pretend like it is. In my lifetime, at least, and any knowledge that I have, the only quote side, or specifically, let's just call it Trumpism, because it's not even really, it's like its own damn thing. Trump is the only president in recent history, maybe all of history in the United States, to do this much to curtail free speech. And when I say free speech, I'm talking about the actual definition as it pertains to the Constitution. And that is government interference. He has attacked the press like I've never seen before. Not because of like misinformation, which, by the way, is difficult to, it's oftentimes difficult to tell, but it's not like misinformation, they're telling lies, anything like that. In most cases that I've seen, they're simply stating the facts. Trump doesn't like it. It's just something that he disagrees with on a personal level, subjectively. And he threatens lawsuits. He's actually pushed lawsuits. He's getting people fired because they think that the world's a better place without Charlie Kirk in it. That is 100% protected by free speech. according to the Constitution. Whether or not the Supreme Court will uphold that, I don't know. But you would have to be a moron to think that it's not. So I think there's a lot of people that fall into that last category, or at least that way of thinking when it comes to like the Charlie Kirk deal. They're afraid of like political violence. They're afraid of like government tyranny, whatever. So they're silent. And in my personal opinion, that is far more dangerous, because all of the rights and freedoms that we've already lost, and there's been a number, especially when it comes to freedom of speech. He has went against the Constitution numerous times, has lost lawsuits from the Supreme Court, and then he still continues. We haven't seen it, at least at this level, ever before. It's important. And there's so many people that are just like, in my opinion, feigning neutrality. And my question is, at what point are you going to say something? Like, ever? Are you going to be like, again, I use this as an example because to me it's very similar. The loads of people, just average everyday citizens in Germany, that just stood by when they knew what Hitler was doing. Anyhow, that's a side tangent. This was a very enlightening video. There's a lot of things that I hadn't considered before, especially like unpacking these quote types and like what leads them to that way of thinking and why in particular they're dangerous. And this as it well, it's always the case with psychology. You can take things that you learn and like kind of filter the world out broadly by using this information and see it in other ways. Not, by the way, I'm not claiming that like the plight of Black Americans is not significant. I'm just saying that you can learn from what this guy is illustrating and apply it to other situations, understand the psychology and the danger involved, and, you know, but make valid points accordingly. Anyhow, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, hit that bell. I'm really awkward because I really fucking hate like self-promotion, but I'm trying to find a middle ground. Thank you for your time.